Look at the destruction in Gaza in 2026. Then look at the mahogany negotiating tables where international boards manage a crisis outlasting generations of diplomats. In 1899, the mayor of Jerusalem, Yusuf Dia al-Khalidi, sent a warning to the founder of political Zionism, Theodor Herzl. He wrote that while he respected the history of the Jewish people, the land of Palestine was already inhabited by an indigenous population that would not easily accept its own displacement. He concluded, "In the name of God, let Palestine be left alone." A common narrative suggests that Palestinian national identity is a relatively recent development, a reactive movement that only materialized following the First Arab-Israeli War in 1948. The 2026 crisis is the latest iteration of the collision al-Khalidi feared. It forces us to look back at the decades preceding the first wars to see how a distinct national consciousness was already being built from the ground up, long before the modern map was drawn. Before World War I, life in Jerusalem was defined by these bustling streets and a complex web of loyalties. A person might identify as a member of a prominent local family, a devout Muslim or Christian, and a subject of the Ottoman Empire, all at once. But the Ottoman state was shifting. A new political movement in Istanbul began centralizing power and enforcing Turkification policies, prioritizing Turkish language and identity over the empire's diverse Arab provinces. These policies alienated local leaders in Jerusalem, Jaffa, and Haifa. The centuries-old imperial contract was breaking, leaving the region's Arab inhabitants to look for a new source of political belonging. The foundational need for a local identity was triggered by the failure of the Ottoman state. Before any British mandate or significant Zionist settlement, the people of Palestine were already searching for a way to define themselves apart from Istanbul. During World War I, the British Empire promised to recognize an independent, unified Arab state in exchange for an Arab revolt against the Ottomans. Arab leaders launched the uprising, believing a new era of sovereignty was coming. This map reveals the reality. British and French diplomats secretly carved the Middle East into arbitrary color-coded zones. The yellow coastal territory became the British mandate for Palestine, where the Balfour Declaration pledged a Jewish national home, bypassing Arab sovereignty. The dream of a unified Greater Syria was shattered. Realizing they were politically isolated from the broader Arab world, the local population was forced to focus exclusively on their own territory. In the wake of the Ottoman collapse, Palestinian intellectuals and journalists stepped into the political void to organize their community. They used the industrial printing press to build a new national infrastructure. Newspapers like Al-Carmel and Palestine became the primary channels for political mobilization. These editors spoke directly to a Palestinian nation. By standardizing this terminology, they helped their readers imagine themselves as a single community with shared interests and a common fate. These publications tracked accelerating Zionist land purchases and the displacement of rural farmers. They warned that if the population did not unify, their presence on the land would be systemically erased. Print media acted as the engine of the resistance. It converted local, isolated anxieties into a cohesive national consciousness that reached from the coastal cities into the rural heartland. By the 1930s, the combined pressure of British colonial rule and expanding settlements began to change the daily reality for everyone in the territory. Facing an existential threat, groups that had historically been divided, Muslims and Christians, urban merchants and village peasants, began to coordinate their political goals. This unity culminated in the 1936 Great Arab Revolt. It was the first massive, sustained expression of a unified Palestinian will, paralyzing the country with strikes and armed resistance for 3 years. The British and Zionist movements attempting to manage the region inadvertently forced these disparate groups to find a common political language, ensuring their resistance would survive long after the revolt was suppressed. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a plan to partition the land into 2 states. The plan was rejected by Arab leaders, and the subsequent war led to the mass displacement of the Palestinian people. This was the Nakba, the catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forced into refugee trucks or fled their homes on foot, carrying only what they could fit into suitcases. The 1948 war realized the exact nightmare local journalists had spent 30 years predicting. The trauma of the Nakba acted as a final crushing weight, compressing a developing identity into its modern, permanent form. The children standing in these ruins in 2026 are part of a story that began long before the current borders. Modern diplomacy fails because it attempts to manage the Palestinians as a temporary administrative problem. Stable peace cannot be engineered while ignoring history. This national consciousness is not a recent invention. It is a century-old identity, deeply rooted in the soil, forged by the very empires that tried to manage its existence.